live. And on this platform, I've been doing the lives because the live doesn't take up memory on the device I'm using. So I can get a longer video in and land the ideas that I want to better as a live than as like a video form. But the lives have been getting a lot less traction, and I didn't know if it's because um because the actual the viewership was changed based on the content, or if it's like the way that the videos are promoted. But I had a teacher in school, I said on another video, is that they recommended that if you're about something, it's actually you have to do it, you have to trust the work itself, and then if you do it long enough, the work will speak for itself. I don't always get along with my family member, but he's an actual artist, and one of the best things he ever did in life is that he marched to his own drum, really in the truest sense of his word, almost damn near. I'm not sure if it was Henry Thoreau or which poet it was that said that about march to your own drum. But if you actually were to, not to blast my family member in their business, but if you were to break down on paper what my family member has, the choices they made, but then also the art that they have to go with that, versus whatever poet it was that made that statement about march to your own drum, I would actually wager that my family member did that better and more of that truer than the actual poet that said that, because they were just like kind of saying that. But that's who my family was member was since birth. But they have the actual pedigree and track record to go with that. And they had a really beautiful painting that they did for me, and I wanted to show it last year when I was streaming, but it's actually technically their original piece, so I didn't know like actually where like the boundaries of like intellectual property were, and then also it was like referencing a famous comic character that I had commissioned them to do it for me, so I didn't present it, but it is simply beautiful. But they actually were a living testimony of like what it means to trust the work. But they've got some success and acclaim with that in their own life. But I've had a similar thing happen with my music and my artwork, where um I've been having more traction musically, like with the guitar, and also vocally too, and then in life too, because I've been practicing like humor. Like I have a little bit of humor on this channel. I'm not sure like how it goes over, because humor is one thing that's hard to gauge, and a lot of, you could almost say like writing is like they say 1 to 5 to 10% of your writing is 1 to 5 to 10% that's really outstanding, and the rest of it isn't on par with the best of what is your work. But it still takes going through all that other stuff, all the reps, all the trial and error to get to the best of it. So the cream is still the cream, but it actually takes the whole it takes the whole barrel to actually get the cream like that, the whole barrel of what you do. But I've been having some success like that, but like, or not or some improvement. You can't really say what success is or isn't, but you can say that you're enjoying yourself. But then also you can, the best thing of success is the sensation of enjoying yourself. But then also sometimes you get traction of like people appreciating or recognizing that what you're doing is starting to become unique, and then then it reinforces it, kind of like a feedback loop, and it's more enjoyable to be enjoyed by others. That's probably the best thing in life. If you think about it, they say like, um someone yesterday was saying like, just because somebody just because somebody gets something, does something, doesn't mean that they're rich. And I was like, yeah, but it also doesn't mean that they're going to heaven, because we know about the camel. But then they say it's harder for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich person to go to heaven. I've heard a lot of like rich, cutthroat, kind of avaricious, I think that means greedy, people say that to me. But like, but also just it, not only does a rich person not guarantee to go to heaven, but they're not guaranteed to be in heaven now. And a lot of people that have a lot of stuff going on for them, like I would imagine like some people, like even people that do outstanding stuff, like you have people that are ever more excellent, they're seeking ever more excellence, but what they're really wanting is to be enjoyed by other people. That's what people really want. Like people sometimes they mess up by trying to be so great, and greatness is great, and it's good to be great, to strive for that, because being improving is part of being excellent. Excellent is part of people of being enjoyed, because like people enjoy excellent things and also excellent people. But it's better, what's more significant is that people would enjoy you, that you would enjoy being enjoyed by others, and thereby also enjoy others, and allow them to enjoy themselves by you enjoying them, but then you also enjoy yourself by being enjoyed by others. That's really, I think, what we're doing here when we're succeeding. And then a lot of other stuff are a roundabout way. And another thing too is like, if you think about it, right, like say you go to the gym, right, you go to the gym, right, and you have someone that go in there like, I'm the best person here. Watch me lift this heavy thing. And then they start shouting and stuff like that so that everybody can know that they're the best person, right? So everybody can stay the hell out of their way when we got to go to the weights, right? So, but actually, that's more of like a pecking order thing and like kind of like a pissing thing. That I used to work at the state fair in the past, and I got some good lessons like with this. There's this older cop. I was on the grounds crew, so I started out like as a traffic guard, and then I actually first I was just like on the side, but then I was actually running the actual traffic at the State Fair of Minnesota, like back in the year in like the early 2000s. I'd be at like I had referenced on this channel that there was a famous slaying uh prior to precedent for I think and corresponding to the George Floyd assassination. There was an assassination about 5 years prior to that, and it was on this road that is in the middle of St. Paul, but it actually skirts farmland in the middle of St. Paul that's owned by the University of Minnesota, and that too sits on the edge of the state fairgrounds, which is the actual venue for farmers of old and now. But I would, at that northern end there, that would be like your street called Hoyt. That's the fair has like it has one road called Como. That's the main road of the fair. You could say I still worked at the fair this year because I was out there practicing my musical chops, and this lady walked up to me dressed to the nines, and she gave me a large face bill as a tip, to hear some of my chops. But she more so liked that I was having the gall to be out there practicing like that, but really actually mean it. She more so liked the aesthetic, but that's part of success as an artist too, is like your success. I mean your aesthetic and your presentation and also your mystique, not mystique, but your aura and the romance of, and then it gotta be romance because you could also be like a badass or like the coolest thing is to accept yourself. So you could be like I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo, but that's cool if it's cool to you, then it's cool to other people. So I'm not saying it got to be romance, but even that has a romance of some kind. It's like its own aesthetic, like a vibe, a vibe, a motif that people choose for themselves. That's what I mean by romance, and other people like it too. So that's what she was rocking with. So you said you could say I actually worked at the state. No, I didn't. So in the past, I used to work at the state fair, but this year I worked the state fair. That's the difference between the big leagues and the amateurs. Is like in anything you do, it ain't about always the money, but it's about how you get to the money. So I don't work there, but I work there. I don't work at there, but I work there. I work that place. And I didn't have to cough up no tax like that, but that stuff puts you in such a good mood that people have to mess up your day. So ain't nothing all the way good to go free. But that woman was really lovely. But she but then that would be like Como. That's like a main road. That's the southern end of the fair. So you have the fair. It's like a square. So you have Snelling, historic Fort Snelling, Highway 51. It goes to the old Fort Snelling, which is a fort on the Mississippi, a barracks for like real military, and they actually still have those barracks now. They're as prominent and bold as they ever were, and also as functional as they ever were, because they're now like well-to-do living accommodations near like, any person that joined the military. You go to a certain you go to like I think anyone in the whole state, wherever they would go to come from in the whole entire state, they go to this particular building before they enter the military, like to be screened and like take tests and stuff like that. And that is actually near about like within maybe 100 yards or 300, maybe 500 yards of the actual barracks of Fort Snelling. So Fort Snelling is actually influential to the world over now, the location of it, simply because that's where anyone who would go to the military from the state of Minnesota would have something to do with the region, the place of Fort Snelling. And that's like to the point I was saying in another video, is that land is significant. So whatever the people would have to do that would make the whatever the land prominences and advantages and disadvantage that would give you the standing and the prompting to have a dual city, twin cities, but also a Fort Snelling, the location of that fort, then the location of the military, the screening, that would have to have some kind of implications into real goings on in the military, subtly but still significantly. Whether you put that place here, or you put it in Duluth, or you put it in St. Cloud, or you put it in Mankato, wherever you would put it, it would have a bearing on the actual the real lived experiences of people, because they had to take this many days to go there, and then they left from there. So logistically, that affects the function and the trajectory of people's lives that go through there, and then the actual goings on of the entire military. I'm not saying that that's responsible for the for the whole military, because it's much broader than that, but it's still significant. It's not it's still meat and potatoes, whatever the state of Minnesota would contribute to the military, but then also to the function of where it would be located, but that too based on the land itself. But that's just a little bit of a that is a little bit tangential, but just still teachable or learnable. So then that transmute and transpires into a road called Snelling. It doesn't actually go exactly straight from there, but it's kind of like roundabout from that. It emanates there. Some of the arteries and like you could say that a city, it has arteries and veins. I think arteries are like blood flow that goes away from the heart, and then I think veins go back to the heart, and both are essential. But cities are like that too. Is that they have, some people would say like highways, byways, but what they're really more saying is arteries and veins is like the best ways to get into a city and the best ways to get out always are not as good or bad. Like sometimes, if you can imagine like a movie of the end of the world and everybody's ass is stuck on the same road that's trying to get out, that would be like a bogus, congested, clogged artery trying to get away from somewhere. But if you had pre-thought before that, you know it serves anyone anyhow at all times of your life. It doesn't matter how young or old you are. It serves you to know the vicinities that you're in, and the different ways, whatever ways to access the nearest ways to get in and out of anything, where you would live, where you would work, where you would frequent. It pays dividends to know the best ways to get around things. And sometimes I think that some of the sensation of fun that children have in getting around a neighborhood, like especially like on bikes, but it probably would actually been on foot before, like a few centuries ago. Before bikes, it would have been on foot. Some of children's instinct to explore things and enjoy exploring things is part of them actually learning their environment, and it'll play into their survival, likely in the human experience then, now, and beyond. Um, but that Fort Snelling, it goes north and south from the. It's a that you could say that's a it's more of I would say it's more of an artery of St. Paul, because more so if you stay on Snelling very long at all, you're soon out of St. Paul. But it's an artery that goes from south of St. Paul straight north, and then the fair sits on that. So the fair is just like is just west of that towards Minneapolis, but still in St. Paul. But it's on the brink of Minneapolis. It's like maybe a mile or two. It's a mile or two east of geographical Minneapolis, and then a mile and about that far from the river itself. But the river segregates or distinguishes Minneapolis and St. Paul, but also Minneapolis can reach east of the river in that area. So, but there, you're in St. Paul. You're in St. Paul until you reach like near Highway 280, and then it's a little bit arbitrary whether you're in Minneapolis, North Minneapolis, or St. Paul, or Lauderdale, Falcon Heights, New Brighton, near about Roseville. I've said that in different videos, but that north south is Snelling. The south, but also another busy road, but that is more of a vein, would be Como, because Como skirts St. Paul, but on Como you're more so on Como you are you're firmly in St. Paul. And if you stay on that long enough, you'll still be in St. Paul for a long time. And it'll just take you deeper into St. Paul or towards Minneapolis. And then that'd be more of a vein than an artery. Then north of that, so the State Fair is the State Fair itself is north of Como, I'm sorry, west of Snelling, and then you get to a street called Hoyt. Hoyt is like the northern end of the fair. So there's nothing beyond Hoyt at the fair but parking grounds, and then beyond that, the actual exact position where Philando Castile was slain, a famous police brutality assassination of a black man about 5 years prior to George Floyd, in the adjoining city, St. Paul, via verse St. Minneapolis, where George Floyd was slain in the pandemic time. But then that Hoyt, it's still about like a quarter mile south of Larpenteur, where he was slain, at the exact position on Larpenteur where he was slain, but as parking there. But that northern street between Snelling, Hoyt, Como, and then I'm not sure the actual western boundary of the fair off the top of my head. It's just like more parking. It's a Fairview. You have a Fairview goes across the University of Minnesota, the St. Paul campus, which seats the farmland, and then like a lot of like great like campus and dorm rooms. Like I did fun stuff around tagging around dorm rooms that I didn't exactly belong when I was a young person, but I would be tagging along there because my whole damn high school went straight to that school. But I wasn't always up on good grades in high school. That Fairview would be the western boundary of the fair, but you also have parking in between the actual goings on of the fair, like these famous little streets inside the fairgrounds, and then the actual border of Fairview. But that northern Hoyt, I would be doing the traffic there, and I would be the main one, letting my nuts hang and telling people like what they can drive or not. And I had a little bit of gusto like to be in front of people like that. But back before I did that, I would be like a lesser guard with just a flag, and then this police officer, he'd be like, "Hey man, you're just looking at yourself, man. I need you to look at the people, man. Keep the people safe, man. Your ass is just pretty there, just looking at yourself, man. Stop looking at yourself, man." I didn't have a mirror, but he was saying that you're being too self conscious is a lesson. And then he said he's another thing he said is that was what he said back in the day. Then when I got to be the one holding the flag and like telling people to go or not go and stuff like that, actually blocking traffic and allowing people to go. He like just actually because you have police officers. The police officers they'll be on Snelling in front of the main entrance to the fair at that junction, and it's still significant to block off Snelling because that needs like even more a higher tier of leadership on Snelling itself because that's a real actual busy artery, like I'm saying. But then these Larpenteur and or Hoyt, less so, and Como more so are just veins of St. Paul, but it's not as official as Snelling, but it's still official because those are your main roads. But when I be out there, he'd be like, "Hey, just make sure you don't get into a pissing match with these people, man. You just be a leader and stuff like that, but don't just you got." It's kind of like what he's telling me is like to be like a tree, so you stand up straight, but a tree got to give a little bit. Don't get into a pissing match, cock I don't know what you call it, cock. I don't know what you call a match between two cocks, but it looks actually kind of silly, but it's also kind of hella dangerous for the cocks because they can really get injured. I'm talking about like chickens, like fighting chickens. I'm not trying to promote harming animals, but it's a famous practice and probably as horrible and traumatic for the animals as like dog fighting. But it's like a form of betting and gambling and like very similar to dog fighting, and almost as lethal and horrible is cockfighting like that. But human beings can do a similar thing. Like not a lot of people aren't as much as dogs as they think, but a lot of people are cocksure, and the cocky stuff can hurt people is bad or worse than the dogs fighting. But because I think dogs and cocks fight differently. But he was saying just don't be about that cocky stuff. But in a gym, it's like that too, where you got people that are like they're very like they're asserting themselves, but that's more so just so that they can impress other people and be entitled they're actually being entitled to equipment, territory, like in terms of like equipment and like room to do things, but also like confidence, like because like everybody's like watching everybody, and like when people believe in you, you believe in yourself. When people think you're worthless, you kind of feel that way. So they're kind of like they're bringing on confidence to themselves by simply being the best, but they're acting like they're always the best. So just because they're the best yesterday, they expect to be the best today, and vice versa, like that. And I haven't experienced a lot of that in gyms, but I remember back in the day, there'd be some people that would be like real. They're like actually like they're being like they're being troublesome and quarrelsome by how loud they're being, like to the point of being rude. And then there's this big old dude named T. I'm also named T, but there's this big old dude named T behind the desk, and he would be running the personal trainers and stuff like that because he was the lead of the personal trainers. But he was a real badass, and he would raise his voice too. But like some of these guys, but he was buff enough to do so without being rude. But these dudes were like being like really rude. Like sometimes people do this thing where they make their voice go really high, but it's kind of disrespectful. He's like, "Hey man, check that shit. By the way, two motherfuckers, two, yeah." But otherwise, he wouldn't say anything until they were really out of pocket. But that's a little bit about entitlement. So those were actually entitled people to be disrespecting other people who are just simply trying to get their health together. But that doesn't mean that you're the best in the gym or the best that you can be because you're the most entitled person. So I wanted to just point out the distinction between hard work and entitlement is where I was going with this one. And I had some things on my mind. But please forgive me right now. I'm nursing a toothache, and it's a mean ass toothache. I had a toothache last night, it's so bad. It's like nearly spiritual how bad the toothache can get like that. You start like if you can imagine what it's like when you hear some nails screeching, but like imagine you heard nails screeching, but it was being recorded by a computer, and it was being captured and emphasized at different sophisticated wavelengths, but ran back to you, but still as horrible. That's what the damn tooth it feels like, and it'll like go between the tooth and the ear, so it hurts a little bit to do this one, but no pain, no gain, baby. So your greatest things you have to like do the work and trust the work before and after there's any accretion on appreciable accretion on the work and I wanted to say a little bit about that like with some things I've been learning about instruments. But another thing I learned about instruments is that damn, this one hurts, man. I'm gonna have to tap back in with another one because this shit really hurt. I'm gonna come back when I have some more ideas hopefully today. But this one hurt bad right now. This tooth that I got going on. Peace out, y'all.